ownership and women into possessions. What you're about to discover will make you see Henry VIII's reign in a completely different light. Because while history remembers the 6 wives who died or were divorced, it forgot the hundreds of thousands of ordinary women who suffered something arguably worse: legal death while still breathing. If you're drawn to legal records buried in court archives and documentation that reveals how power actually worked, not the sanitized version they taught in school, then every view, every subscription helps us uncover more accounts like this one. We dig through Tudor court records and legal manuscripts scholars have overlooked for centuries. Now, back to the story, because what we're about to uncover makes every injustice you've heard of look temporary. Consider yourself in 1535, standing in a small parish church in Yorkshire. You're 19 years old, the daughter of a prosperous wool merchant. Your father spent years teaching you the trade. You know how to negotiate with shepherds, judge the quality of fleece, keep account books. You've been running parts of his business since you were 15. Today is your wedding day. You're marrying the son of another merchant family. You're wearing your finest gown, purchased with money you earned yourself. In a leather purse hidden beneath your skirts, you carry the coins you've saved over the years. After the ceremony, there will be a feast, paid for partly by your dowry of £200, a fortune in an era when a skilled craftsman might earn £5 a year. The priest begins the ceremony. You repeat your vows. Your new husband slips a ring onto your finger. And in that instant, you cease to exist. Not physically, of course. Your heart still beats. Your lungs still draw breath. But legally, you have just died. The woman who walked into this church, the merchant's daughter with her own earnings, her own property, her own legal identity, has vanished. In her place stands a femme covert, a covered woman. And the law is very clear about what that means. The doctrine of coverture stretched back centuries, inherited from Norman French law after the conquest of 1066. The legal theory was almost poetic in its cruelty. A husband and wife were one person under the law, and that one person was the husband. Let's be absolutely clear about what this meant in practice. That £200 dowry you brought to the marriage, it's his now. Not ours, his. The coins in your purse, his. The gown you're wearing, legally he owns it. Any wages you earn in the future, from weaving, from selling goods at market, from any labour, those wages are his property from the moment you receive them. But the erasure goes deeper than property. You cannot enter into a legal contract. If you try to make an agreement to sell goods or services, it's void. You cannot sue someone who wrongs you. Your husband must do it on your behalf. You cannot be sued for debts you incur, because legally, you're not capable of incurring debt. If someone slanders you, damages your property, or even assaults you, you cannot take them to court. Your husband is your only legal voice. When you go to the market to sell wool after your wedding, the buyers are confused. They've done business with your family for years, but now they're told they must deal with your husband. When you try to collect payment for goods you sold before the marriage, money owed to you, you discover you have no legal right to collect it. Those debts are now your husband's property. Your father had set aside a small workshop with looms and spinning wheels as part of your marriage portion. You'd planned to run it yourself, employing other women, building a business. But under coverture, you cannot legally employ workers, sign contracts with suppliers, or even rent the building without your husband's involvement. If your husband is supportive, he might allow you to continue the work, acting as your legal proxy. But if he's indifferent or actively hostile, or simply incompetent at business, there's nothing you can do. The workshop that was meant to give you independence has become just another piece of his property portfolio. And if he's cruel, if he drinks away your earnings, if he gambles with your inheritance, if he beats you and you try to leave, the law offers you almost no recourse. Divorce, in the modern sense, doesn't exist. Legal separation was possible but rare, expensive, and didn't restore your legal identity or your property. For the vast majority of women, farmers' wives, craftsmen's daughters, servants, labourers, there were no protections. They experienced coverture in its rawest, most absolute form. They had to hope their husbands would be kind, competent stewards of the family property. Hope was not a strategy, but for most women, it was the only option available. In Tudor England, if you were born female and into a family with any property at all, your economic value was calculated from birth. Not your potential, not your talents, not your intelligence. Your value as a commodity in the marriage market. Fathers kept ledgers. They recorded their daughters' portions alongside livestock and land values. A first daughter might receive 100 marks, a second daughter, perhaps 80. The calculations were precise, cold, and utterly transactional. England's inheritance laws favoured primogeniture. The eldest son inherited the family estate intact. Daughters received dowries, a one-time payment of money or property that would be their only inheritance. But remember, the moment they married, coverture ensured they couldn't control it. Envision a meeting in a prosperous London townhouse. Two fathers sit across a table, wine between them, documents spread out. They're negotiating their children's future. My daughter brings £200 in coin, plus household linens valued at £20, says the first man, a successful cloth merchant. She's been trained in household management. She reads and writes, and she's of excellent character. She's 16, sir. The second man nods. He's a minor gentleman with a small estate in Kent. The boy will provide her with a jointure, use of 1/3 of the estate should he predecease her. She'll have a chamber in the manor house, an annual allowance for clothing, and I'll settle £20 on her immediately upon marriage. They might as well be trading horses. Notice what's absent from this conversation. The young people themselves. The daughter's feelings, her ambitions, her desires, irrelevant. This is a business merger, and the daughter is a combination of assets being transferred from one balance sheet to another. For daughters, this system was psychologically devastating. Their worth was explicitly quantified. A girl with a £200 dowry was literally worth twice as much as her sister with £100. The marriage market assigned them a price tag, and everyone knew it. When things went wrong, it was catastrophic. A merchant family with 3 daughters might have their business collapse. A ship sinks, a partner defaults, plague strikes. Suddenly, they cannot pay the promised dowries. The daughters become unmarketable. Men who had been courting them vanish. Marriage prospects evaporate. They face a future as unwanted dependents in their brother's household, burdensome, with no path to independence. The most famous example involved a queen. When Catherine of Aragon married Henry VIII's older brother Arthur in 1501, Spain paid an enormous dowry of 200,000 crowns, roughly £40,000. But Arthur died months later. Catherine's parents demanded the dowry back. Henry VII refused. For 7 years, Catherine lived in England in desperate poverty, her dowry paid but inaccessible, her status unclear, her future uncertain. Catherine's experience, stuck between 2 kingdoms, 2 marriages, treated as a piece of disputed property, was exceptional in scale but not in kind. Thousands of ordinary women experienced similar disputes, their lives caught in the machinery of dowry negotiations and inheritance law. The stories you're hearing aren't taught in schools. They're buried in legal documents, court records, and church archives, the hidden history of how law transformed women into property. If you believe these voices deserve to be heard, subscribe now and turn on notifications. We're only halfway through this story, and what comes next is even more disturbing. On July 11th, 1533, Pope Clement VII issued his verdict. Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon was valid, and his marriage to Anne Boleyn was invalid. Henry's response was swift and absolute. He rejected papal authority entirely, declared himself supreme head of the Church of England, and sentenced Catherine to a slow, humiliating death as a non-person. Catherine, who had been Queen of England for 24 years, was stripped of her title. She was now Princess Dowager of Wales. She was forbidden from seeing her daughter Mary. She was moved from residence to residence, each one smaller and more uncomfortable than the last. Her household was reduced, her income was cut. She was isolated, surveilled, and slowly broken. When she died in January 1536, many believed she had been poisoned. The truth was almost worse. She had been legally and socially murdered, erased while still alive. And every woman in England understood the message. Catherine of Aragon was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, the most powerful monarchs in Europe. She was educated, intelligent, politically skilled, and beloved by the English people. For 2 decades, she had been a model queen. She had given Henry a surviving child, a daughter, Mary. She had even served as regent, commanding the defence against a Scottish invasion. None of it mattered. When Henry wanted a son and a new wife, Catherine became disposable. If a queen with royal blood, powerful family connections, and decades of faithful service could be cast aside, what security did any other woman have? The message rippled through every level of society. Merchants' wives whispered to each other at market. Noble women at court grew silent and afraid. Every married woman in England now knew with absolute certainty her position depended entirely on her husband's continued approval. And that approval depended on things often outside her control, particularly her ability to produce male heirs. Let's be clear about the biological reality. A woman has roughly a 50% chance of conceiving a male child each pregnancy. In the Tudor period, approximately 15 to 20% of male children would die in infancy, and more would die before reaching adulthood. For a woman to produce even one surviving son was not guaranteed, but the pressure was enormous. A wife who produced only daughters was a failure, not in the eyes of medicine or biology, but in the eyes of law, society, and often her own family. Henry's break with Rome had another catastrophic effect on women: the dissolution of the monasteries. Between 1536 and 1541, Henry's commissioners systematically shut down every monastery, priory, and convent in England. For monks, this was disruptive but manageable. Most were educated men who could find positions as parish priests or tutors. They received adequate pensions and could marry under the new religious settlement. For nuns, the dissolution was catastrophic. Nunneries had been one of the only places in Tudor England where women could live with genuine autonomy. A nun was not subject to coverture because she was not married. She answered to her abbess and her order, not to a father or husband.